Hello, hello. Welcome to Connect LA. You are listening to KQBH LP, Los Angeles, California, a community service of the Boyle Heights Arts Conservatory, broadcasting live on your FM dial and streaming on lpfm.la. I just want to preface this that today is going to be quite a hefty show. It's going to be about a lot of the nitty gritty about Los Tres. You're going to be able to meet them in a second. But I just wanted to say hello, welcome. You are listening to Connect LA. Today, it'll, as well as it has been for the past couple of weeks, it's just going to be me today. But I have some special guests that I'll introduce to you in a couple of seconds. But we're going to get into some music, and then I'll be right Psych. Well, while we're waiting for this to get on, I'm gonna turn your guys' mics up. Hello, Rudy, Beto. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I'm gonna try to speak a little bit louder. But yeah, so we are here with Los Tres, Rudy and Beto. I want you guys to introduce yourselves, who you guys are, to the audience. By all means, give an intro. Whoever wants to go first. I'm trying to speak as loud as possible. I want you to introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Rodolfo Sanchez, Rudy Sanchez. They call me Rudy, of course.
Okay. All right, so what about you, Beto?
Yeah, my name is Beto Ortiz.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Born in East LA, Boyle Heights. Actually, on Vignes Street, back in 1949.
Wow, okay.
It's not too far back. I was just born a little early.
All right, what about you, Carmelo? The people want to know.
Okay, my name is Carmelo Alvarez, a long-time youth and culture activist, and I am co-writer and director of the play Fui Los Tres.
Wow. Well, since we're here, I'm gonna play some music in a second, but now that we're all here, just kind of chit-chatting and stuff, I want to be able to get into who you guys are in terms of who are Los Tres. I know that right now, sadly, Johnny is not here, but I want to be able to have you guys explain who you are and how you guys came to be, as well as meeting Johnny and being who you are, because I know you guys hold so much history within yourselves. So if you guys can just elaborate on that and let people know.
Okay. I guess I'll start. Actually, growing up in Boyle Heights, which was Pico Gardens, back in the 60s, of course, everything with me started when the high school walkouts back in March of 1968. I was involved in that with all the students walking out. From there was other issues going on and developing, aside from police brutality and the education system and so forth. We ended up forming an organization called Casa Carnalismo. And then from there, a lot of work developed in terms of working with the youth in Pico Gardens. And some of the issues were, we were giving classes. We were keeping the youth from using drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the drugs that everybody was starting with was sniffing glue. There was a campaign against that. And then from there, just to speed up a little bit, we started a anti-drug campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And in that anti-drug campaign, one of the things was to, like I said, keep the kids off from getting strung out onto harder drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of our friends were even dealing,
Mm-hmm.
So we approached them nice way, talked to them. They responded well,
Mm-hmm.
By moving out of the neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, if you need to do what you got to do to get out of that situation, by all means, because at the end of the day, because sometimes even now looking at it, I'm sure you guys know as well, like how things have just kind of have gotten a little bit worse with especially the way that social media kind of dictates what is this picture that's painted for like these things that these kids are using, as well as how much of an impact it is for other people looking at it, because there's so many different age ranges that are on like Instagram and Twitter, whatever, what so have you, and there's so much that you can see on there that I think it makes it harder for these people that want to spread this awareness, like how you were trying to do it, and like making sure that the right people are like seeing the right perspective. And it's really tough right now, but go ahead. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were gonna say something. But yeah, I also kind of want to touch on how you guys feel now, especially since like there's so much that has gone on within the past 50 years, and like how you feel now, especially since Johnny sadly is like no longer here. How do you guys feel about all of that as a whole, being Los Tres, like how you guys were all like in this together?
Yeah, real quick, let me mention something about Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Johnny, I kind of grew up with him in the same projects.
Mm-hmm.
Our families were intertwined. My older brother had married his mom back in '68, so we were semi-family, you know, and Johnny too was involved with some of the things we were doing, you know, and one of the things that led up to who we ended up being was we went to meet this guy who posed as a dope dealer, wanting to buy drugs. So our thing was to go approach him and chase him out of the neighborhood.
Exactly.
You know, take what he had and take it and
run him out of town.
And chase him out of there and not to come back trying to sell or buy drugs. In the
Definitely. I mean, we need more people like that. We need to make sure that we're getting the right things into the right hands, as opposed to like just letting these types of things slide. And I think now when we look at how the cops are doing things and how they're handling things, especially for brown folk, and being in minority communities such as Boyle Heights and South Central and other places like that, we're able to see that there's not as much being done, or there's not as much awareness being put into these types of things and these types of issues that should be getting the awareness that they deserve, and being able to have the right news on other platforms as well. But yeah, I'm just in awe at the fact that you guys are here, and I'm just really excited to get the show going. But I'm gonna take a quick break with some music. I just wanted to introduce y'all first, but yeah, let's get into it.
Cut.
Hello, hello. What is up? How are we doing? Just wanted to check in and say hello. Oh my god, my headphones are not all the way up, but hello. How are we doing? How are you guys feeling? Just wanted to check in with you guys. Hello. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay. I don't want to like turn my mic up too loud now, but yes. Yeah, so off air we were talking a little bit about what it means to be a part of this community, how it is in terms of you know, making it out and what that means for us youth. And I kind of want to know about you guys growing up here. How did you guys feel growing up in this community? And what does that mean for you guys now, just looking back at everything that you guys have done?
Well, you know, I got here in 1956.
Mm-hmm.
We came from New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
My parents moved down here because my mom couldn't handle the cold weather. She used to freeze up over there. So we moved over here. They told us to either go to Arizona or California. So we had family here already. So we ended up in Boyle Heights. Actually, we live right next to the Strata Courts.
Oh wow!
But we lived in the factories. There was still homes there. They're all gone now, but there was still homes there. So we lived there, and we hung around at the projects with people there. So and then later on, at my older years, I got involved with Beto and Juan. I was working with Oscar Acosta, an attorney.
Okay.
At the time, and I ran into them. They were working for Casa Carnalismo.
Yes.
So I became also a member of the Casa Carnalismo and the people there, you know. We were organizing in the neighborhoods. So actually, we got set up on this case. And unfortunately, we didn't see it. But it was undercover agents already with a prepared agenda to arrest us. You know. And so we ended up with this case. But the case, it wasn't so much that we were trying to read the community of the drugs, because we know reality is way beyond that, you know, when the system is completely, you know, involved in the drug maintenance and the drug distribution in this country.
Exactly.
It's not only just the drug dealers, but, you know, it's coming from other countries in planes, trains, or whatever.
In any means of
gets
travel,
here.
yeah.
You know, so it's big business.
Definitely.
You know? And we didn't know how big it was. But we got in against it. And, of course, we couldn't fight there. From there, we went on to other organizations with Bert Corona at Casa and Chole a la Torre and, of course, other ones like Rose Cherning also, which were involved at that time. And they showed us another way.
Yeah.
It was about the workers' movement, about labor. It was about education, better education for our people, better living conditions for our people. The living wage, as we're still fighting right now, it's all about the living wage. And, of course, that's where we're at now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
we're fighting for the living wage, for equality, for everything that everybody is the needs.
Well, you're preaching to the choir because we
Our
see it every
community
day.
needs it all.
Exactly. I think even now when we look back at, or when we look at our community now, we see how gentrification is not only happening with our community, but with tons of other communities as well. But I kind of also wanted to turn the table over to Beto too as well for your own perspective and like kind of adding on to what Rudy had already mentioned about like growing up here and like what that kind of means for you as well.
Well, let me see. I mean, growing up in East LA, of course, you know, it's a challenge in terms of, you know, growing up with your friends and what you end up doing or not doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you learn from the streets. But in terms of what Rudy mentioned, you know, the bigger picture as far as the drug problem, it's the government.
Yes.
It's the CIA. it's those who manufacture it overseas, and that's the bigger picture of it. I mean, you know, we can't. You're just fighting a battle you're not going to win at the level that we're at.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Definitely.
But anyway, they sent us someone, an agent, undercover, set us up. We ended up arrested, tried, found guilty, of course, you know.
That's insane.
The sentences that we were given was Rudy 25 years,
Oh my God.
40 years, 40 years in prison. Juan was given 25 years in prison, and I was given 10 years in prison, you know. And, you know, during the trial, it was such a farce that you wouldn't believe. You know, after discovering through the transcripts of the insight of what the lawyers talked about, what the judge talked about, gave us a better perspective of the whole situation. And I think Carmelo can add to that right
Yeah, of course. I mean, kind of a little bit of backstory on who's about to speak. Carmelo, there was this play made about Los Tres, Beto, Johnny, as well as Rudy, and Carmelo was the head of that. He kind of was able to be the playwright as well with these two amazing people. They were able to all work together, make this amazing play that I was glad enough and fortunate enough to witness and work on as an ASM. But it was a pleasure working with Carmelo as well as being with him now. And I want you to be able to elaborate on how it was being able to unpack all of this history with the two people that lived through it. How was that?
Well, for me, it was, you know, it was an honor. It was an honor to tell their story. When I was 14 years old, I was catching a bus in downtown LA that was passing by the Federal Building, and on one side of the street was Manson followers. They had just sentenced Manson to the death penalty, and his followers. The young women, they bald their heads and they put SWAT stickers in the forehead.
Oh my
And I remember
God.
seeing that, you know. But one day, which was literally 50 years ago, 50 years ago, I was passing by the Federal Building and I saw people protesting with signs and chants, "Free Los Tres, Free Los Tres." And you know, 30 that was 47 years later, I got to meet them.
I know,
and
it's
they,
crazy.
And they gave me their permission to tell their stories and to work with them to tell their story. And in telling their story, we discovered so many things that were relevant then, and even in the history of this country, and are very relevant today. I'll give you an example. For example, today, you know, we're dealing with police brutality. Well, back then, we were definitely dealing heavily with police brutality because, you know, we didn't have cell phones, so we didn't have cameras. So if the young people were having gathering or hanging out, like say in the projects, the police could just roll up on them, harass them, hit them, beat them, do anything, because there was no evidence. So on one particular day, we read this story about Bear Bryant, who was a young man that used to be associated with Beto and and Johnny, and police rolled up on them, and he ran. They caught up with them. He wrestled with one of the police, ended up wrestling the gun away from him, and shot the police officer. So at that point, the police declared war on the youth in the projects, and this was in 1969. Ruben Salazar was doing a report on the over policing of the community, and he actually went to Casa Carnalismo, and he spoke to Al Juarez, which was one of the mentors of the youth there in Pico Gardens. And then on August 29th, 1970, when the Chicano moratorium was held to protest the draft of mainly Chicanos who were being sent to the front line to fight and die, and then treated like crap when they came back, Ruben was covering all that, and he was there covering the Chicano moratorium. And then he was shot and killed by the sheriffs. So the police and law enforcement already had an eye on them. There was also the COINTELPRO that was started by the FBI. It was a covert operation to infiltrate into all the movements, including the Black Panthers, the Chicano movement. And they sent in a paid informant who joined the Chicano movement and was helping to even organize the moratorium and introducing weapons and guns to the movement.
Oh my God.
And when he was also asked to introduce drugs into the movement, that was around the same time that Los Tres were arrested. And he said no, and he turned and wanted to testify in their behalf. But the judge did not allow him to do that. See, behind the scenes, we saw that in the transcripts. So they held a press conference where he told everything. We have a signed affidavit, and also the articles from the newspaper that were from the press conference, where this was a Chicano that was hired to dismantle the Chicano movement, and that was one of others. So they were already looking at us. They already had infiltrators and informants, paid informants. And the idea was to dismantle this movement.
And like, this is the thing, like, even the way that you guys are explaining this, it's so saddened to hear these types of things, because all you would ever hope is for like Brown to support Brown. Like, we want to be able to support our minorities, especially because it can be so hard, especially now, like looking at other communities and like being able to have that same recognition, because it's harder sometimes to really be able to still see that with our other people. And like, especially now, we live in a white America where we're not able to have that same recognition or that same kind of like support, because sometimes it's hard to go to a protest and feel safe and feel comfortable, because even the way that sadly Ruben Salazar was sadly, like, when he passed away, like it was like he was literally like, they sought out to kill that man, and it's like so unfair to see these types of stories.
To silence him. Well, one of the things that really inspired me was Rudy. You wrote a letter, I think it was from Atlanta prison, and he wrote a very powerful letter with a very powerful message that I think is very relevant today. Today we're all really more in touch with each other on a global level. So yes, the internet, has some negative aspects, but it also has some positive where we can communicate with each other, around the world. And I think Rudy, maybe he could share a little bit about that. But he went from the idea of nationalism to internationalism, where if all the workers around the world unite, then that's where we'll have more power to transform this world and the inequality that exists today, where you have literally 1% of billionaires, which are not becoming trillionaires.
I know.
And then 99% of everybody else is a working poor, or at this point homeless and on the streets. So maybe we can share
by all means, I would love to hear about this letter.
And introducing weapons and guns to the movement.
Oh my God.
And when he was also asked to introduce drugs into the movement, that was around the same time that Los Tres were arrested, and he said no, and he turned and wanted to testify in their behalf.
What?
But the judge did not allow him to do that.
Uh-huh.
See, behind the scenes, we saw that in the transcripts.
Mm-hmm.
So they held a press conference where he told everything. We have a signed affidavit, and also the articles from the newspaper that were from the press conference, where this was a Chicano that was hired to dismantle the Chicano movement, and that was one of others. So they were already looking at us. They already had infiltrators and informants, paid informants, and the idea was to dismantle this movement.
And like this is the thing, like even the way that you guys are explaining this, it's so saddened to hear these types of things, because all you would ever hope is for like Brown to support Brown. Like we want to be able to support our minorities, especially because we like it can be so hard, especially now, like looking at other communities and like being able to have that same recognition, because it's harder sometimes to really be able to still see that with our other people. And like especially now we live in a, sadly I say, we live in a white America where we're not able to have that same recognition or that same kind of like support, because you know sometimes it's hard to go to a protest and feel safe and feel comfortable, because even the way that sadly Ruben Salazar was sadly, like when he passed away, like it was like he was literally like they sought out to kill that man, and it's like so unfair to see these types of stories.
To silence him. Well, one of the things that really inspired me was Rudy. You wrote a letter, I think it was from Atlanta prison, and he wrote a very powerful letter with a very powerful message that I think is very relevant today. Today we're all really more in touch with each other on a global level. So yes, the internet, has some negative aspects, but it also has some positive where we can communicate with each other, around the world. And I think Rudy, maybe he could share a little bit about that. But he went from the idea of nationalism to internationalism, where if all the workers around the world unite, then that's where we'll have more power to transform this world and the inequality that exists today, where you have literally 1% of billionaires which are not becoming trillionaires.
I know.
And then 99% of everybody else is a working poor, or at this point homeless and on the streets. So maybe we can share
by all means, I would love to hear about this letter. Sorry, I need to turn on my mic. About the letter that you had wrote from being in prison in Atlanta about
well, when I was a prisoner there, I was there with his name was Oscar Esquella. Desquea. He's a Chileno. He was a airplane pilot from the Chilean Army.
Oh wow.
Chilean Air Force, and they had also set him up with a kilo of coca in his plane when he landed in Florida, which was one of his routes. He had a plane route from Chile to there. I don't know what he was delivering, but they arrested him, and I met him here. And the reason they arrested him, because they were ready to throw the coup in Chile. And he was one of the supporters of Allende. So he got me to reading Marx, Engels, Lenin, and he told me, you have to have a theory. You have to have, something that is true.
Yeah.
And not lies, So I started reading materialism, and I came to the conclusions, that it was about a world movement for all workers, because that's what it's about, It's about the working people to live better. We're looking for like right now, the main thing is a living wage,
Exactly.
which is only
Yep.
that are working 2 jobs to make $15, you know. So, we've come a long ways. And we've come from Chicano nationalist movement for a workers' movement that we are all part of, you know. When you saw the marches of the black people, for the Black
For
Lives
BLM,
Matter,
Black Lives Matter.
you
yeah.
saw everybody there. Not just black people, everybody, because that's what it's supposed to be. And that's the way we believe now, And what happened then has brought us to this maturity, to see life in a lot different ways than when we saw it then,
Exactly. And like not only that, but just a new perspective and how it's not just one way, and like we should all be able to share our own opinions and be able to be heard without having to be living in fear of how other people might react, or how higher up people, especially like government officials, that are kind of like looking at us as like this means of like big, we're all gonna get together and we're all gonna destroy them. Like, why? Like, we don't have the time or energy to do that. Like, we just want to be able to live a happy and healthy life without having to be in fear of them. And like, that's all we'd ever want. And like, I'm sure you guys have the same opinions, where you just want to be able to like live your life freely without having to worry, and be able to be who you are without having to, like I said, live in fear. But yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about this particular incident that had happened with Los Tres, and how this all kind of came to be. So what is this infamous incident? Whoever wants to go ahead, by all means, start off and set the scene.
Well, let me see. The scene was that an agent had gotten contact. We didn't know he was an agent first, but someone contacted Rudy,
Okay.
right? And then Rudy contacted Johnny and me, and he says, "Hey, there's someone over here that, needs a lesson."
Needs
So,
a good little lesson from good old Beto.
So this guy wanted to, he wanted to buy,
You can step a little bit closer to the mic too.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
He wanted to buy, but we weren't dealers, you know. So we went and decided to approach him. The incident happened in Estrada Courts off of Hunter back in July of 71, July 22nd. The incident happened around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 1:30. Not knowing there was other agents surveilling this individual
wow.
that
Okay.
Rudy took to the projects. Then Johnny and myself showed up. Rudy told him, "I'll be back with the stuff." Rudy left him, and then me and Johnny showed up and approached him, So knowing that this guy had money on him, we decided to take his money too, to teach him a lesson, But instead of pulling out a wallet, he pulled out a gun.
Oh no.
So there was shots fired.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So he went down. He got hit. We got away. But then at Rudy's home, they tracked us there.
No way.
They tracked us there, and there was a big incident in Montebello. Helicopters, Highway Patrol, FBI,
wow.
ATF. There was Montebello Police. Everybody was there from the police department.
Oh,
Anyway,
my.
we were hiding behind a house in a garage. They came. Lady went outside, said they're back there. Anyway, they got us, took us out in the streets, and they did a number on us, beating us, handcuffed us, beat us, put us in the car, took us to the Montebello police station. They put our heads against the wall, handcuffed, dropped our pants, beat us again.
Oh no.
And then from there, they took us to the Glass House, downtown LA. And then they separated us, and held us there. So that was the beginning of the arrest. Okay, then a lawyer came and told us what went down, and they found out that the guy that was shot was a undercover federal agent. We never even knew who he was, you know. Anyway, we get charged with federal crimes, you know.
Yeah.
We get indicted, and then the trial starts. It turns out that in trial, at the incident, other cops stated that the undercover cops stated they left their guns in the car. You know, come on.
What? Come on.
On a stakeout.
Yeah.
They decide to leave their guns in the car.
What a coincidence that at
Yeah.
the stakeout you're leaving
So
your
in
gun
other
behind.
words, that puts the blame on us shooting the guy, right?
Yeah.
It turned out because these agents left their guns in the car, there was a possibility, and we even heard a third shot.
Yes, I
You
was
know?
I was gonna say that. Yeah.
You know, he never got to fire. I shot, Johnny shot, but you know what? There was a third shot. And from the angle that where it hit him, no way that I could have shot him. No way Johnny could have shot him.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, he was shot like in the back. Anyway, so of course we were found guilty. We were sentenced to 10, 40, and 25 years to
gosh.
prison. They sent him to Atlanta, Georgia. They sent Juan to Leavenworth. And they sent me to Lompoc here in California. So from there, after the incident happened, Casa Carnalismo, the organization we belonged to, they formed a committee. It was a committee called To Free Los Tres.
Yes.
So they started organizing events to raise money for our bail and for and to publicize it.
How much was your? Do you guys remember how much your bail was at the time?
It was 50,000 each at that time.
Wow,
50,000. So it was total 150,000.
that's insane.
You know. So anyway, that's how the committee got started to free Los Tres. We were locked up for almost 3 years before we made bail. They raised enough funds to get us out on bail,
What?
pending appeal. The appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So anyway, that's where that happened. You know.
Yeah.
And while we were out, we were up and down the state, speaking at rallies, speaking in classrooms, speaking at all kinds of different universities. During that time too, of course, we had support from the Black Panthers, which was Angela Davis.
Yeah.
We had support from the AIM movement, American Indian movement. The head guy was Dennis Banks back then. Corky Gonzalez from Denver, Colorado. There was connections to, there was even connections to Mexico.
No
know?
way. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Raza supports Raza. Why
Yeah,
not?
you
Like,
know.
by all means.
So the case got a whole lot of support. Whole lot of support.
That's crazy. And like
And-
the thing that kind of blows my mind is that you're talking about how like all these people are like supporting, and all these people, even with like Casa de Carnalismo and like this committee that was was able to like fundraise all of this money. That is a enormous amount of money, and especially for like in terms of like the Chicano moratorium and stuff like that, with like bigger organizations where like this didn't even get as much coverage as it should have. And even then, like being able to start from something so small and just be able to get this enormous amount of money, that's insane. And I think even now today, being able to interview you guys is like such an honor, because who would have thought that you would be able to be here today, especially given the time that you guys had been served and the amount of years. Like, damn, that is so long. But yeah, you guys do not deserve any of what you guys went through. But I also wanted to touch a little bit about how the play was able to get a little bit of like be able to get into fruition. How did Carmelo meet both Rudy and Beto, and like how that also kind of got started?
So I met Beto and Rudy through my cousin, Miguel Lopez Vigil. who I met up with him at a gathering we had for Mangas Colorado, who was a one of the East LA 13, and Richard Vigil was his name, but they knew him as Mangas. And we went there to pay respects. And somebody mentioned that Miguel was into theater, and I had already been doing plays at Casa 0101.
Oh, okay.
So he happened to be a member. He was actually a paying member of Casa.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Exactly. That's what I was like, oh wow, I didn't know, you know. So I told him, you know what, I've always wanted to do a play about Los Tres. And he goes, I know them.
Oh, wow.
Because there's only two. He goes, one of them passed away. Johnny passed away, but I know Beto and Rudy, and let me call them and see if they're interested. So he called them, and then we met up at San Antonio Winery. That's where I met them for the first time. And
I thought you were going to say like Alan B's or something.
That came later.
Oh, nice.
So, but we met there, and then they said, yeah, let's do this. And we actually we wrote for like 2 years. Like for 2 years, we used to meet up at least once or twice a week and write. And then we went and Beto found the transcripts that were being held in the federal archives. And when we looked in there, wow, that was an eye-opener. For example, Beto talks about the incident where they were charged with assault on a federal officer. Yet the ballistics that were done by the FBI turned out inconclusive. Like they could not connect one of the guns, which was Johnny's gun. They could not connect that gun to the shooting. But they never did ballistics on the federal agents' guns, or even on the federal agent that was posing as a drug dealer, because when he jumped off his motorcycle, he could have shot himself, you know.
Yeah.
Or the other federal officers that were the backup, they could have been aiming for one of Los Tres, and when the guy jumped up, they shot him in the back.
Yeah.
But that was never presented in court. But yet we saw it in the transcripts from the federal archive, and the lawyers never brought that up. You know, they never demanded that the agents' guns also be tested to see if that bullet came from one of their own.
Exactly.
So that's very important. So going back to the play, also then we called once again on the committee. So there were many committee members that were still alive and remembered the case, and we had a fundraiser. And also one of the committee members was Gil Cedillo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, him and his wife used to go to the protests. So he actually helped to fund the play. Was Gil. Thanks to Gil.
That's great.
He helped to fund the play, and also the committee members raised money, so we put it together. And really, you know what? Ultimately, the people funded the play because it was sold out every night.
It
was those tickets that covered the cost of the theater and the actors and everything, the costumes and the whole production.
Yeah.
So I really have to thank not only the committee to Filos Tres members, but also the public, the community.
Yes, exactly. And I think even with Free Los Tres, it's a real story that I think a lot of people within this community want to be able to learn about and want to be able to hear about, because we don't get to hear these things in our history books. We don't get to hear these things about in our schools. And even my sister, who was studying Chicano studies, and in her Chicano studies classes, none of Los Tres are covered, especially talking about the Chicano moratorium and people like Ruben Salazar that, you know, had been silenced. And I believe that almost the same thing happened to you guys, where like your story was almost silenced, like where there wasn't as much coverage as it deserved. But I was gonna mention, even within the play, you see where Johnny was in his car, no, or like one of the officers had came up to his car and like he was like beating him and like telling him like you did it or something. I'm trying to like piece everything together, because it was like I think 3 or 4 years ago.
Johnny, you know, he resisted, and they tried to offer him a deal, like if you tell us who did it,
like
you
a
know,
plea deal or something.
on the side, like a side deal, you know. But these men, they were, you know, one of the things is about their characters, they're very loyal. That's one of the things that our community, our people have. we have loyalty. That's one of the things that's very characteristic about raza, about Chicanos.
Yeah.
We don't play that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But this is a very important. I think it's a very important story. You had the walkouts in '68. Then you had the Chicano moratorium in 1970, and then you had Los Tres in '71.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very important historical event, and it needs to be looked at and studied because it's an example of how COINTELPRO infiltrated into the Chicano movement, and also how the system, the court system, how they manipulate the courts to incarcerate our people.
Yeah.
So this case involves police brutality, involves incarceration of our people, the infiltration of drugs in our community, and just injustice in general.
It involves so much that yet goes so unlooked. And I think even now, when we see the stories that are being told, I'm sure you guys had talked about this with my sister too, about like not like having proper representation of being brown and like what that means for us, being able to like connect to these stories and like be able to watch a movie and say like, oh my god, like that's how I feel, that's properly like how I'm feeling right now as a brown person.
I also wanted to mention something like before this interview is over that I feel is important, is to mention the participation of the women, because while the men were in prison, the women stepped up. Not only did they have to continue to maintain and support the household and the children, but they were also a part of the rallies and the demonstrations and the lobbying and the fighting for their freedom, and also visiting them and helping to raise money for their bail. So it cannot be, it has to be mentioned that that the women were the backbone of the movement, and they're like unsung heroes,
Yeah, I'm sure they are, especially even given the fact that like he had went to Atlanta and then you stayed here luckily in California. Like that is such a move, like being so used to like living here and seeing the same streets, and then like suddenly uprooting your whole life and like going to Atlanta. I'm sure that was even like such a like trip for people too. I mean, if you want to touch on that, like being like moving all the way to Atlanta, being incarcerated over there, how did that feel? And like how do you feel now, like reflecting on that?
Well, let me tell you, federal prisons are all over the country. So usually they send you, like when I got to Atlanta, the age limit there was from 33 up. And I was 26.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I was already 28 when by that time I got, 27, I think. So, and when I got there, they told me, you're not supposed to be here.
Oh, wow.
So they called Washington, the Bureau of Prisons, and told them,
should have told him send me home.
He's too young to be here. You know what they told him? They told him, no, that's where we want him.
No way. Oh, my gosh. That is a trip.
Juan, the same. He was a youngster in a federal penitentiary, Leavenworth, where they killed one of the Magon brothers there. Ricardo Flores Magon was murdered in that prison. He was another leader.
Crazy.
I don't know if you know about him.
No, yeah, I'm trying to, like, everything that you guys are saying, like, I'm piecing everything together, like, as you guys are saying it, like, what years, when everything happened. But you guys hold so much history, too, like, within yourselves. And I think it's really awesome. And I really want to, like, be able to attribute that and really give an homage to you guys, because you guys deserve it. But, for my show, every time before I end my show, I do a film review, but I kind of wanted to touch on the Battle of Algiers. I know that there was a little bit of influence about that for the play, so I kind of wanted to have a little bit of an open conversation about that. I don't know, Carmelo, if you want to open it up about the film.
Yeah, when I asked, because in writing the play, it's really telling their story. So I remember asking them what was one of their influences, and then Rudy mentioned that he went to go see the movie The Battle of Algiers.
Oh,
so
wow.
I think he could definitely speak on that.
Yeah,
We
of
show a little
course.
clip in the play, but I think they're the ones to speak on it because it's their story.
Yeah, of course. If you guys want to touch on Battle of Algiers, what it means to you guys in particular.
Battle of Algiers.
Oh, yeah, the Battle of Algiers. We were during that time. Actually, we were pretty radical at that time, and we were looking at stuff like that. The Battle of Algiers showed us a lot, because we saw people that are fighting, where there's a country is completely in control of their country, French was completely in control of the country. And we saw people, fighting. And they came out of the penitentiary. So that, it kind of put my brain into that way, because, my parents were also involved, in the strikes for the Salt of the Earth, the movie where they made it. They were there.
Oh, wow.
They were part of the workers. My dad worked in the mine, and my mom was part of the auxiliary committee that the women had to support the workers then. So we come from that kind of history,
Yeah.
So it wasn't too much when I got in with Casa and them to go into this to see the real politics of life, of the economy, It's about the economy,
Yeah.
It's about, it all comes back to a living wage.
Yes,
We
definitely.
gotta live.
Yes, definitely,
So
exactly.
going back to the movies like Edgar J. Hoover, who formed the COINTELPRO to infiltrate into all the political movements, was also involved like with McCarthyism and what they called in Hollywood the Red Scare.
Yes.
So movies like The Salt of the Earth, they were banned. And the Battle of Algiers, they were taken out of the theaters.
Yep.
The Salt of the Earth was one of the first movies with all Chicano cast, and it was a movie about the salt miners who were mainly men that they were being abused and taken advantage of and risking their life to mine for salt. And if they went on strike, they would get fired. So the women did it. So the women would block the roads, from the supplies, and they would be putting their bodies like literally on the line,
Oh, wow.
So that's what the Salt of the Earth. So they didn't want. So they considered it to be like communist, influence, radical, and they were banning those movies, and also a lot of the writers were also being what they call blacklisted.
Yes.
So the writer of the Salt of the Earth, he was blacklisted, and those movies were banned. So
Yeah.
that's that. So the COINTELPRO and J. Edgar Hoover was just a continuation of that mentality.
Yeah.
And that led to I think that history led up to the incident of Los Tres, because they were definitely being watched,
Yeah.
and the movimiento was definitely being infiltrated to be dismantled and to be stopped.
And I think even now, like, I'm sure there are hundreds of stories just like yours that have not been shared or don't see the light of day because they're not told by the right people, or they're not having the same recognition as they should. And I think even now, looking back like 50 years after all of the fight, after all of everything that had happened, what was both of your guys' main takeaway of the whole thing? And how do you guys feel now looking back, and especially with young activists now? How do you feel looking at all your hard work?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, I really feel good knowing that the country has woken up and are marching. Especially the young kids. They're doing their thing, and they are the future.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are gonna make that change. Where everything's gonna change eventually. Everything will change, and the rich will get taxed.
Yes, they will. They will get taxed. Eat the rich.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
I really feel good about it because just the adventure of fighting for what you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
means a lot, and the young generation today, they know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. It's just that there's a lot of obstacles right now.
Yes.
Same obstacles that were back then 50 years ago. So our story and our experience, I mean, it really feels good to know that I have this history, because 50 years ago, I mean, I was 22 years old, and so seeing the change, but yet seeing things the same. I mean, like back then there was no technology like there is today,
Mm-hmm.
but back then it was all the hard work, the flyers, the printing of flyers,
Yep.
phone calls, through the rotary dials,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, and word of mouth. Everything was word of mouth, and it was amazing just to be part of that movement back then.
Yeah, I mean, what else do you have to share? I would love to hear from you as well.
like, como dice el Beto, ¿verdad? Who said that? I remember that we spoke in San Jose one time, and after we spoke, Corky said, as the brothers were saying, and he like he's saying, everything that we did then is bearing fruit,
Mm-hmm.
because the movement's still at it. There's still a movement going. I mean, it would be really bad if everything ended there and stayed quiet, like the way they try to do. They try to keep everything quiet. Our history is on the sidelines. We have to go look for it and make it and put it out front. Because our history, you can't find it in our books. Find it in our books. Find it in our books.